When the waiter placed the bill on our table that night, I saw my daughter-in-law glance at it, then at me. Her face tightened. She didn't whisper. She didn't even lower her voice. Instead, she said, right there, in front of my son, my grandson, and half the restaurant, "Are we supposed to pay now?" "Because your mom just sat there and didn't even reach for her purse." The words cut sharper than I expected. I felt every eye at that table turn toward me, and I swear for a moment the whole room went quiet. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because I didn't want my grandson to see my eyes water. I didn't want to ruin the night more than it already was. I said softly, "It's all right, baby. I can handle it." Then I reached for my purse, but inside, it felt like something small inside me broke. You see, I've never been the kind of woman to measure love in money. I raised my son through long shifts, cold nights, and empty pockets, and still found a way to give him everything he needed. I never asked for anything back, not once. But that night, sitting under the warm lights of that fancy restaurant, I realized something. Love doesn't always return the way you gave it. Sometimes it comes back in silence. Sometimes it comes back as shame. I remember my grandson, sweet little Jordan, looking up at me with confusion. He didn't understand why Grandma suddenly looked so small. My son tried to laugh it off, saying, "Babe, it's fine. Mom's got it." But his voice sounded strained. Maybe he felt embarrassed, too. Maybe he didn't. I still don't know. The waiter smiled politely as I handed him my card, but I could feel pity behind his eyes. And as we left the restaurant, I walked a few steps behind them, my family, listening to their laughter that didn't sound real anymore. That night, when I got home, I took off my earrings, placed them on the dresser, and sat quietly on the edge of my bed. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, the woman who once worked double shifts as a nurse, the woman who packed lunchboxes and prayed over sick children, the woman who thought family meant forever, and I whispered to myself, "What did I do wrong?" That's how the story began, a simple dinner that changed everything. I still remember the first time I held my son. He was so tiny, so warm, so perfect that I couldn't stop crying. I named him Marcus, after my late husband's father, a strong name for a baby I hoped would grow up to be kind, steady, and good. Back then, life wasn't easy. I worked as a nurse at a city hospital, the kind of place where the lights never go off and the air always smells like antiseptic and coffee. My shifts ran long, sometimes 12, 13 hours, and I'd come home so tired I'd fall asleep still in my scrubs. But Marcus, he gave me reason to wake up every morning. He'd crawl onto the couch, sit next to me and say, "Mama," one day, "I'm gonna buy you a big house so you don't have to work no more." And I'd smile, brushing his curls out of his face and say, "All I need, baby, is to see you happy." That was the truth. I didn't dream of fancy houses or vacations. I just wanted my boy to have a good life, one better than mine. For years, we were a team, just me and him against the world. When he turned 12, he started helping me around the house. He'd make his own breakfast, mow the small patch of grass out front, and wait up for me when my shift ran late. Sometimes he'd say, "Mama, don't work so hard. You need to rest." And I'd tell him, "I'll rest when you've got everything you need." Looking back now, I realize that's where I went wrong. I raised him to see me as strong, always able, always providing. And I forgot to show him that I could be tired too. By the time Marcus finished college, I had gray streaks in my hair and knees that ached when I climbed the stairs. But I was proud. I stood at his graduation, clapping so hard my palms burned. He hugged me afterward and whispered, "Mama, I made it because of you. That moment made every long night worth it. Then came the next chapter, his marriage. When he told me he'd met someone, I was happy for him. Her name was Tanya, pretty girl, confident, with sharp eyes and a smile that could light up a room. She worked in marketing, always polished, always poised. At first, we got along just fine. I tried to make her feel welcome, invited her for dinner, shared recipes, even gave her small gifts like scarves or candles. She thanked me politely, but there was always a distance in her tone, a kind of careful courtesy, like she didn't want to get too close. Still, I told myself, give it time. She'll come around. When they got married, I cried through the whole ceremony, not out of sadness, but out of pride. I thought I was gaining a daughter. A few months after the wedding, Marcus and Tanya bought a house on the other side of the city. It was beautiful, white walls, big windows, a yard with space for children. I helped them move in, labeling boxes and setting up curtains while Tanya arranged her furniture. When it was time to go home, Marcus hugged me tightly and said, "Thank you. Mama, you don't know how much I appreciate you." And Tanya smiled, just a little, and said, "Yes, thank you. Mrs. Hill." Mrs. Hill, not Mom, not Mama Hill, just Mrs. Hill. I told myself it didn't matter. She had her own way of doing things, but small things started to change after that. Marcus used to call every night, just to check on me, tell me about his day. After the move, those calls grew shorter and then less frequent. When I'd call him, Tanya would sometimes answer, "Hey, Mrs. Hill, Marcus is busy right now. Can he call you back?" Sometimes he did. Sometimes he didn't. At first, I told myself he was just adjusting. New job, new marriage, new responsibilities. But in my heart, I could feel the distance growing. It wasn't anger, not yet. Just silence, the kind that sits heavy in a room. A year later, their son was born, my first grandchild, Jordan. I can still see that little face the first day I held him. He had Marcus's curls and Tanya's eyes. I felt this wave of warmth, like life had given me a second chance to love deeply again. I offered to help. I wanted to babysit, to cook for them, to be part of Jordan's world. But Tanya always said, "It's okay, Mrs. Hill. We've got it handled." So I waited for invitations that didn't come. Holidays, birthdays, they'd call last minute, sometimes after the celebrations were done. When I did get to visit, Tanya was polite but brisk, like she was timing my stay. She'd say things like, "Jordan's nap time is coming up," or "We have a schedule. You know how it is." And I'd nod, smile, and say, "Of course, baby. I understand," even when it hurt. Still, I tried to stay present. I'd drop off small gifts for Jordan, picture books, soft toys, clothes. Sometimes they'd thank me. Other times, I wouldn't hear anything back. But I told myself, this is family. Don't let pride get in the way. Then one day, Marcus called. He said they wanted to take me out for dinner, a fancy restaurant downtown. I remember how excited I felt. I even took out my nicest dress, pressed it, and polished my shoes. That evening when I arrived, they were already seated. Tanya looked stunning in her cream-colored dress. Marcus wore a blazer, and Jordan sat between them, swinging his little legs. I smiled as I approached the table, saying, "Look at y'all, my beautiful family." Tanya smiled politely. Marcus kissed my cheek. It felt almost normal again. For a little while we talked easily. Tanya mentioned her new project at work. Marcus shared stories about his office. And Jordan showed me his toy car. I laughed, listening, soaking it all in, thinking maybe, just maybe, things were healing. Then the waiter came with the check. He placed it right between us. On that white tablecloth, Marcus reached for his drink. Tanya glanced at the bill, then at me. And that's when she said it. "Are we supposed to pay now? Because your mom just sat there and didn't even reach for her purse." There was no anger in her tone, just that cold sharpness that slices deeper than shouting ever could. My hand froze on the napkin. Marcus looked down, silent. Jordan blinked, confused. I could have argued. I could have said, "Sweetheart, I was invited." But something in me went still. Instead, I smiled. A small, trembling smile, and said, "It's all right, baby. I can handle it." Because what else could I do? I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want my grandson to remember the night Grandma and Mommy argued over a bill. So I reached for my purse, handed the waiter my card, and sat quietly while the world inside me turned heavy. Later that night, when I got home, I made myself some tea and sat in the quiet. The city outside my window buzzed faintly, but my apartment felt too still. I looked at the photo on my shelf, the one from Marcus's graduation, and whispered, "Where did I lose you?" It wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about love that had grown distant without me noticing. And as I sat there, sipping my tea in the glow of the kitchen light, I realized something. You can give your whole life to someone, your time, your heart, your sacrifices, but they still might forget what it cost you. That night became the moment I started seeing my family differently. Not with anger, but with the quiet ache of someone who finally understands that love doesn't always come back the way you gave it. It had been 2 weeks since that dinner. 2 weeks since the night Tanya's words echoed in my head like a whisper that wouldn't leave. I tried to shake it off. I told myself it was just a misunderstanding, that maybe she hadn't meant to sound so harsh. But silence can be heavy, and mine lasted longer than I planned. Marcus didn't call. Tanya didn't text. And I told myself to stay still, to let them come when they were ready. But every night as I sat in my living room with the TV murmuring in the background, I felt the kind of loneliness that creeps up quiet, the kind you don't admit to anyone. The rain came down one evening, steady and slow. I made myself some soup and sat near the window. My phone lay on the coffee table, face down. I kept glancing at it, even though I told myself I wasn't waiting for a call. Old habits die hard. Then around 8, it finally rang. "Hey, Mama," Marcus said, his voice light but tired. "Hi, baby," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "It's been a minute." "Yeah, been busy, you know." "Work's crazy right now," I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. How's Tanya and little Jordan?" "They're good." "Tanya's been stressed lately, but she's managing," I hesitated. "That dinner the other night," he cut in quickly. "Oh yeah, that was, kind of awkward, huh?" I smiled, even though my heart ached. "A little," he sighed. "She didn't mean it, Mom. Tanya she gets anxious about money." "You know how she is, baby," I said gently. I didn't mind paying. "It wasn't about that." I know," he said quickly. "Let's just forget it, all right?" "It's done." And then he changed the subject. Just like that, we talked for a few more minutes, small talk mostly. Then he said he had to go. When the call ended, I stared at the phone for a long while. He wanted to forget it, but I couldn't. Not because I was angry, but because that moment had shown me something I couldn't unsee. The days turned into weeks. I went about my routines, watering my plants, visiting the grocery store, volunteering a few mornings at the local clinic. But inside, I carried a quiet ache. Sometimes when I walked past the park, I'd see families sitting together, laughing. A part of me wondered if Tanya and Marcus ever brought Jordan there. I missed him the most. My sweet little boy. So one Saturday, I decided to visit. No warning, no call ahead, just a grandmother wanting to see her grandchild. When I knocked on their door, Tanya opened it. She looked surprised, maybe even slightly uncomfortable. Oh, Mrs. Hill. Hi, I smiled. Hey, baby. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by, see y'all. She hesitated. Marcus is out running errands. That's all right, I said softly. I just wanted to say hello to Jordan. Tanya stepped aside, but I could feel the hesitation in her body. Jordan ran to me the second he saw me. Grandma, he shouted, hugging my leg. My heart melted. I crouched down, holding him close. Hey there, big man. Grandma missed you. We played for a while on the living room floor, building little block towers. Tanya stayed in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, barely speaking. After a while, I stood and said, I'll get going. I just wanted to see my boy. Tanya looked up briefly. Okay, thanks for stopping by. I smiled again, though it felt like smiling through glass. That night, Marcus called. His tone was tense. Mama, you shouldn't just show up like that, he said. I froze. I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to intrude. I just missed Jordan. I get that, but Tanya doesn't like unplanned visits. It stresses her out. I understand, I said quietly. It won't happen again. There was silence. Then he said, Love you, Mom. I love you too, I whispered. But the call ended, and I sat there in my little living room, feeling like I'd just lost something small, but precious. The distance grew thicker after that. Fewer calls, shorter messages, and I learned to fill my time in other ways. I started volunteering more, helping out at the church food drive, visiting older neighbors who didn't have family nearby. It helped in a way. It reminded me that love didn't have to vanish just because it changed shape. Still, some nights I'd catch myself staring at the empty chair across from me, imagining Marcus sitting there, telling me about his day. Then one morning, I got a call from a woman named Sharon, who worked at the hospital where Marcus was employed. Mrs. Hill? She said gently. I'm sorry to bother you, but I think you should know Marcus fainted at work today. He's okay now, but they're keeping him overnight for observation. My heart dropped. What happened? Stress and exhaustion mostly, she said. He's been overworking himself. I thanked her, grabbed my purse, and rushed to the hospital. When I arrived, Marcus was lying in bed, pale and hooked to a monitor. Tanya sat by the window, her arms crossed, staring at her phone. I stepped in quietly. Hey, baby, Marcus smiled weakly. Hey, Mom, I walked over, touched his hand. You scared me. I'm fine, he said softly. Just a little tired. Tanya didn't look up. I turned to her. You okay, sweetheart? Yeah, she said flatly. He's just been working too much. I told him to slow down. Marcus tried to smile again. You know how it is, Mom. Bills, daycare, the house. I nodded. I know, baby. But money don't mean much if it costs your peace. He looked at me with tired eyes, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a flash of the boy he used to be. Soft, humble, hopeful. Later that evening, as Tanya stepped out to take a call, Marcus said quietly, Mom, I know you've been hurt. I'm sorry about how Tanya talked to you that night. I looked at him surprised. He continued, I should have said something. I just didn't want to cause a scene. I thought it would blow over. I reached out, squeezing his hand. It's all right, baby. You were trying to keep the peace. He shook his head. Still, you didn't deserve that. Those words, small as they were, healed something in me. Thank you, I whispered. He smiled faintly. I'll make it right. When he was discharged, I offered to stay with them a few days to help out. Tanya didn't seem thrilled, but she didn't say no. So I cooked, cleaned, helped with Jordan's bedtime, and made sure Marcus rested. One night, as I was folding laundry, I overheard Tanya on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low but sharp. "I can't keep doing this, Mom. He's useless when he's tired. Everything falls on me. And his mother, she's just sitting here like she owns the place." I froze. The air seemed to leave the room. She paused, then said, "No, I don't care what she's been through. I didn't marry her. I married him." I quietly put the laundry down and went back to my room. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about how life teaches you through the people you love most. Sometimes it teaches patience. Sometimes it teaches letting go. The next morning I made breakfast, kissed Jordan on the forehead, and told Marcus I'd be heading home. "You sure?" he asked. "You don't have to leave yet." I smiled softly. "I think Tanya needs her space." He looked uncomfortable but nodded. On the way out, Tanya mumbled, "Thanks for your help." "Of course," I said gently. But as I drove home, tears welled in my eyes. Not angry tears and just tired ones. I realized I couldn't change how she saw me. All I could do was keep showing love in the quiet ways, the ways that didn't need applause. Weeks passed. Marcus recovered, but I noticed something shift between them. He seemed quieter, less patient. Tanya, more irritable. Then one afternoon, he stopped by my apartment, unannounced for the first time in years. He looked worn out, but calm. "Mom," he said. Sitting on the couch, "I think Tanya and I need a break. She's staying with her mother for a while." I set my teacup down. "I'm sorry to hear that, baby," he sighed. "We've been arguing a lot. About money, the house, Jordan, everything." I reached over, patting his hand. "Sometimes life makes us slow down so we can see what really matters." He nodded, eyes glistening. "Yeah, I think I lost sight of that." We sat there in silence for a while. No judgment, no blame, just a mother and son rediscovering peace in each other's company. Life has a quiet way of balancing itself. You don't always see it right away, but when it comes, it doesn't shout. It whispers. For me, that whisper came through the cracks of my broken expectations and through my son's quiet return home. When you get older, you start to understand that silence often carries the loudest truths. It doesn't need to shout, doesn't beg to be heard. It just sits with you until you finally listen. That's what those next few months felt like. Silence trying to teach me something. Marcus came around more often after Tanya left. He'd stop by after work, sometimes with little Jordan, sometimes just to sit with me and eat whatever I had on the stove. We didn't talk much about Tanya, not at first. The air around her name still felt fragile, like a wound healing too slowly. One evening, as the sun went down and the sky turned that deep gold that makes everything look softer than it really is, Marcus finally spoke. "Mom, do you ever think people just fall out of love?" I looked at him carefully. He wasn't asking to be right. He was asking to be understood. "I think," I said slowly, "sometimes people forget what love really is. They confuse it with comfort or with control." He stared at his hands. "I think we both got lost trying to prove something. She wanted me to be successful, and I wanted her to feel proud. But somewhere in there, I stopped being myself." I nodded, feeling his words like small echoes in my chest. "Love shouldn't make you lose yourself, baby. It should bring you home to it." He didn't reply, just sat there, quiet, letting that truth settle. The weeks turned into a rhythm. Marcus working, Jordan visiting on weekends, me keeping the house warm for whoever needed a place to breathe. But one morning, I got a message I didn't expect. It was from Tanya. It read, "Mrs. Hill, I know we've had our differences. I was wondering if we could talk." I stared at the message for a long while. My first instinct was hesitation. The wound was still tender. But then I thought of Marcus and Jordan and the kind of mother I'd always wanted to be, one who chose peace even when pride was easier. So I typed back, "Of course, dear. Would you like to come by, or should I meet you somewhere?" She replied, "Could we meet at the park near the old coffee shop?" That Saturday afternoon, the air was cool, and the trees were starting to change color, a slow surrender from summer to fall. I arrived early, sat on a wooden bench near the pond. Kids were playing in the distance, laughter floating like tiny bells. When Tanya appeared, she looked different. Tired. Not in the way a person looks after a long day, but in the way someone looks when they've been fighting battles no one else can see. She sat down beside me, keeping a polite distance. For a while, we just watched the ducks move across the water. Then she sighed. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. I turned to her. "You don't owe me anything, sweetheart." She shook her head. "No, I do. I've been unfair to Marcus, to you." Her voice cracked. That night at the restaurant, I was angry. I felt like everyone was judging me. My mom always made me feel small growing up, and when the bill came, I guess I just wanted to prove I could handle it. I stayed quiet. Sometimes people need silence more than advice. She took a shaky breath. When Marcus got sick, I realized how little all that pride mattered. I kept thinking about how calm you were, even when I was rude. I don't think I've ever met someone who could forgive so quietly. My eyes softened. It wasn't forgiveness at first. It was confusion and hurt. But I've learned that holding on to anger is like holding hot coals. You burn yourself long before you throw them. She smiled faintly, eyes glistening. I see that now. We talked for almost an hour. About Marcus, about Jordan, about life being harder than it looks on the outside. When she stood to leave, she turned to me and said softly, "I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I just hope maybe one day you'll trust me again." I reached for her hand, old, wrinkled fingers meeting young, uncertain ones. "I already do, baby. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek before she walked away. That night, Marcus came by after putting Jordan to bed. He looked peaceful for the first time in months. "I talked to Tanya," he said quietly. "She told me she saw you." I smiled. "She's a brave woman, Marcus. It takes courage to face what you've done wrong." He nodded slowly. "She wants to come home. We're going to try counseling this time. For real." I felt warmth bloom in my chest. "That's good, baby. Healing isn't easy, but it's always worth it." He hesitated, then added, "She also said you forgave her. I don't think I ever thanked you for that." I looked at him, tears filling my eyes. "Son, forgiveness isn't a favor. It's freedom. For both people." The following weeks were filled with small signs of mending. Tanya and Marcus started attending therapy. Jordan began drawing family pictures again, with all three of them holding hands. And me? I felt peace I hadn't known in years. Sometimes I'd walk through my little apartment, noticing the quiet and realizing that for the first time, it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like rest. One Sunday morning, Marcus called and said, "Mom, don't cook today. We're taking you somewhere." I laughed. "You sure about that? Last time we went somewhere fancy, it didn't go so well." He chuckled. "Trust me, this one's on us." So that evening, I found myself back in a restaurant. Not as fancy as before, smaller, cozier, filled with warm lights and soft music. When we sat down, Tanya smiled at me across the table. Her eyes were softer now, different. Jordan climbed onto my lap, proudly showing me the little drawing he'd made, all of us sitting together at a table. "See, Grandma?" he said. "We're all happy again." My throat tightened. "Yes, baby, we sure are." When the waiter brought the check at the end of the meal, I noticed Tanya glance at it, then look at me. And before I could say a word, she reached for it. "I've got it," she said softly. "Please," I smiled. "You don't have to, dear." "I want to," she insisted, "for everything." Our eyes met, and I saw the quiet sincerity in hers. It wasn't about money anymore, it was about grace. After dinner, we stepped outside. The night was cool, the city lights glimmering like promises in the distance. Marcus wrapped his arm around Tanya. Jordan skipped ahead, chasing shadows, and I just stood there for a moment, breathing it all in. Life had brought me full circle. From pain to peace, from distance to understanding, from silence to soft laughter again. Later that week, Tanya stopped by my apartment with a small gift, a simple white box tied with a blue ribbon. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled shyly. "Just something small." "Open it." Inside was a framed photo, the four of us at dinner that night. Me, Marcus, Tanya, and little Jordan smiling wide. At the bottom of the frame, she'd written in neat handwriting, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I pressed the frame to my chest, tears slipping down my cheeks. And for the first time, I realized this was the ending I hadn't known I was praying for. Sometimes, life doesn't fix things the way you want. It doesn't erase the hurt or undo the past. But it gives you moments, gentle, quiet moments, that remind you healing is possible. That's what forgiveness really is, not pretending the pain never happened, but deciding it won't control you anymore. That night, before bed, I whispered a small prayer. "Lord, thank you for second chances. Thank you for teaching me that even when love gets messy, it can still be mended, one humble heart at a time." And as I turned off the light, I felt the kind of peace that only comes after a long storm, the kind that makes you smile in the dark, knowing morning always comes. You know, I've always believed life has a way of circling back, sometimes not to where we began, but to where we finally understand. That was me. Those months after everything changed. My mornings were slower now. The house was quieter, but not in that lonely kind of way. It was the kind of quiet that lets you hear yourself think again. I'd sit by the kitchen window with my tea, sunlight spilling over the old table, and I'd find myself smiling for no reason at all. Maybe it was peace. Maybe it was gratitude. Maybe it was both. One Saturday, Marcus called. "Mom, you busy?" I laughed. "You know I'm never too busy for you." "Good," he said. "Tanya wants to cook dinner at your place tonight. She says she's been practicing your cornbread recipe." I chuckled. Well, tell her she better bring an appetite too. I'll handle the greens. That evening, the house came alive again. Tanya walked in carrying grocery bags, her hair tied back, and Jordan followed close behind, clutching his favorite toy truck. The moment felt whole, like the laughter and warmth had finally come home after being gone too long. In the kitchen, Tanya looked around, smiling softly. "I forgot how cozy this place feels," she said. I nodded. It's seen a lot of love, and a lot of lessons. She paused, then said, "I hope I can help bring more of the love part back." I reached over, touching her arm. "You already have, sweetheart." As we cooked together, I noticed the small things that had once felt broken were quietly healing. The way Tanya hummed softly as she stirred the pot. The way Marcus came up behind her to taste the sauce and grin. The way Jordan kept tugging at my sleeve, asking if I could show him Grandma's secret spice mix. All those tiny moments, stitched together, became something precious, something called family. Dinner was beautiful, not perfect. The cornbread was a little too brown, and Jordan spilled his juice halfway through. But it was real. After we finished eating, Tanya stood up, took a deep breath, and said softly, "Mrs. Hill." "No, Mama." "Can I say something?" Her voice trembled a little on the word Mama. I smiled and nodded. She continued, "I used to think being strong meant winning every argument, proving I was right. But after everything, I learned being strong means admitting when you were wrong and learning to love better." She looked at Marcus, then back at me. "I don't know if I'll ever deserve the kind of forgiveness you've shown me, but I want to keep trying." Tears welled in my eyes. I stood, walked around the table, and wrapped her in my arms. "You don't have to earn forgiveness, baby," I whispered. "You just have to live like you believe it's real." After that night, everything shifted, not in big, dramatic ways, but in small, sacred ones. Tanya started stopping by on her own, bringing me flowers, asking for recipes, sometimes just sitting on the porch talking about her day. Marcus began volunteering at the local community center, teaching kids how to fix things, bikes, radios, small engines. And little Jordan, well, he became my shadow. Every Sunday morning, he'd knock on my door shouting, "Grandma, pancake, time!" And I'd laugh, pulling out the griddle before I was even fully awake. One afternoon, Tanya and I sat together folding laundry. The sunlight through the window caught her wedding ring. She was wearing it again. I noticed it but didn't mention it. Some things don't need words. But she smiled, following my gaze. "Marcus and I renewed our vows last week," she said softly. "Just the two of us and the pastor." I looked at her with surprise and warmth. "Oh, honey, that's beautiful." She nodded. "We promised to start over, honestly this time. No more pride, no more keeping score." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "That's how love survives, baby. Not by being perfect, but by being patient." She smiled. "You really are the heart of this family, Mama Hill." Her words sank deep. For a long time, I'd thought my role had faded, that I'd been pushed aside. But sitting there in that golden afternoon light, I realized something. I had never really been forgotten, just quietly waiting to be remembered. Months passed, and one summer evening, the whole family came together again, this time at my place for a cookout. Marcus grilled in the backyard, Jordan chased fireflies, and Tanya set the table with the kind of care that made everything look beautiful. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft pink and orange, I stood back and watched them, my family, laughing, eating, whole again. There was a time I thought I'd lost them, but sometimes losing something teaches you how precious it really was. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I walked into the quiet kitchen. There was one plate left on the table, a slice of Tanya's peach cobbler, wrapped neatly with a note beside it. It read, "For Mama. Thank you for never letting us stay broken." I smiled through tears, sat down, and took a bite. It tasted like home. I think forgiveness is one of life's hardest lessons. It doesn't erase the past. It doesn't mean you forget. It means you choose love anyway, even when it hurts. I used to think karma was about people getting what they deserve, but I've learned it's more about people getting what they need. Tanya didn't need punishment. She needed grace. Marcus didn't need blame. He needed understanding. And me? I needed peace, and somehow, by the grace of God, we all found it. Sometimes I sit on my porch with a cup of tea and watch the rain slide down the railings. The world looks washed clean, new again, and I think about that night at the restaurant, the shame, the sting of humiliation, and how far we've all come since then. If someone had told me then that one day Tanya would call me Mama, I would have smiled and said, I doubt it. But life, it surprises you that way. It humbles you. It heals you. It reminds you that people can change when love gives them room to. A few weeks later, Tanya asked if I'd like to join them for church on Sunday. I hadn't gone in a while, but something in me said yes. That morning, as I stepped into the pew beside them, Jordan slipped his tiny hand into mine. He leaned over and whispered, "Grandma, I told my teacher you're my best friend." I smiled, my heart swelling. "And you're mine, baby." The choir began to sing softly, a song about mercy, about second chances. And as I listened, I realized that's exactly what we'd been given. A second chance at love, a second chance at family, a second chance at grace. If I've learned anything, it's this: you can't control how people treat you, but you can control how you respond, with kindness or with bitterness. And kindness, no matter how small, always plants something good. When I think back to that night, that humiliating moment that once felt like the end, I see now that it was just the beginning of something new. Something real, because sometimes life doesn't take things from you to punish you. It takes them to make room for better ones, and forgiveness, true forgiveness, is what makes that room possible. So, if you're listening to this, maybe with your own kind of pain sitting heavy on your heart, let me tell you something. Don't give up on love. Don't give up on people. And most of all, don't give up on yourself. Because just like the rain makes everything bloom again, forgiveness can make even the hardest hearts soft once more. And in the end, that's where peace lives. Right there, in a heart that still chooses love. You know, when I look back on everything that's happened, it still amazes me how life finds a way to heal us. Even when we think we're too broken to be put back together. There was a time I thought that night at the restaurant would haunt me forever. I thought the shame, the whispers, the look in Tanya's eyes, all of it, would stay with me like a scar that never fades. But scars are funny things. They don't disappear. They just remind us that we've survived. And survival, in its own quiet way, is a kind of victory. These days, I find peace in the little things. The sound of Jordan's laughter echoing through my house on Saturday mornings. The way Marcus checks in every evening, even if it's just a quick call to say, "Love you, Mom." The way Tanya hugs me before she leaves, holding on just a second longer, the kind of hug that says thank you without words. It's in those small moments that I realize love didn't just come back. It grew, it deepened, it became something stronger than pride, softer than regret. Sometimes I sit on the porch swing in the evenings, the sun dipping behind the buildings, painting the sky orange and pink. I'll sip my tea, feel that cool breeze touch my face, and I'll whisper a little prayer of gratitude. Not for the easy days, but for the hard ones. Because they're the ones that taught me who I am. They're the ones that showed me what love really means. Forgiveness doesn't always change the other person, but it always changes you. It turns anger into empathy. It turns pain into purpose, and it turns endings into beginnings. If I've learned anything, it's that life will test your heart. It will break it, bend it, stretch it beyond what you think it can handle. But if you keep your heart open, if you keep choosing love, it'll always find its way back to peace. There will be people who hurt you, not because they want to, but because they don't know how to love the right way yet. And there will be moments when pride makes you want to walk away instead of reaching out. But I promise you this, nothing heals faster than kindness. Nothing lasts longer than grace. I used to think karma was about payback, about seeing people get what they deserve. But now I see, karma is really about balance. It's about lessons finding their way home. Tanya's lesson was humility. Marcus's lesson was patience, and mine was forgiveness. We all learned in our own time what love asks of us and what it gives in return. So if you ever find yourself sitting alone after being hurt by someone you love, take a deep breath. Let the anger go, one piece at a time, because somewhere down the road, life will bring you a moment that makes all that pain make sense. Maybe it'll be a child's laughter, maybe a quiet apology, maybe just the peace of knowing you chose to stay kind, even when it wasn't easy. That's what I wish for you. Peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's apology. Peace that lives inside your heart, no matter what, because when you carry love instead of bitterness, you never walk alone. And when you forgive, you set yourself free. If you agree with me and liked my story, show it by giving this video a like. Let's see how many of us feel the same. I'm curious, what city are you listening from? And what time is it there? Write it in the comments. If you'd like to support my journey, you can send me a small donation. Thank you for listening and sharing your precious time with me. For more life stories like this one, check out the other videos on my channel and subscribe. I've added 2 new stories on the screen that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Click one and start listening now. Love to you all.